McHale probably will be coming out of the bullpen, Jacques. I mean, I know he'll be coming out of the bullpen the opening weekend. Whether or not he moves into a midweek starter role, I can't tell you again because I don't know who's going to be available. But he would certainly be a candidate that potentially could be a midweek starter in the early part of the schedule. But you know, I hope that when he pitches this weekend, he pitches great. He'll pitch at some point out of the bullpen this weekend, and how much he pitches could determine whether or not we would look at him and as a starting pitcher in the middle of the week.
He was so good that freshman year, and then the injury at the end.
Yeah, he really wasn't quite himself last year. This fall, he was back to himself. He was throwing the ball with good velocity, good movement. His curveball was tight again. He looked like he did his freshman year. This spring, it's been a little bit slower coming for him. I thought he threw really well the last 2 times out, but his first few times he didn't look like the old Mikhail Hilliard, and I was getting a little bit worried about whether or not his arm was bothering him or whatever, but I just think it was one of those things that it took him a little while to kind of get it going. What we've seen out of him in the last 2 outings was very positive.
What has Hal been doing at the plate during the preseason?
Hal's look good. You know, he's playing his usual defense, and he's putting the bat on the ball. He's given some good quality at bats. I think it's taken a couple years, but Hal has learned who he is as a hitter. You know, I don't want him trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark because he's going to not have success doing that. He's going to make a lot of easy outs. But when he uses the whole field and handles the bat either with bunting or hit and run, he becomes an asset for us. And you know, I think it's sinking in now with age and maturity and experience and all those kinds of things. So, you know, again, like I said, we have different possibilities of the lineup, and two of those possibilities include him in the lineup, and one of the possibilities doesn't include him. So you can use your imagination to try to figure that out. All right, but Hal's going to be a vital player for us. You know, he's been kind of a steady Eddie guy. That, you know, the freshman year when Josh Smith went down after 3 games, if it wasn't for Hal stepping in and playing shortstop so outstanding for us, it could have been a really tough year. Last year he played a lot of third base with Josh healthy, and his defense was a real asset. You know, obviously we'd love for him to hit more. I'm sure the fans would love to see him hit more. But Hal's always going to be a very valuable player to our team, whatever the role is.
How's Mo Hampton's swing, coach, from the start of the year to now?
Yeah, moderately improved, I would say. He's still not what we think he can be. You know, baseball's a hard sport to lay off for so long and then jump right back into it and be back to what you're used to being. At times I feel like Maurice is getting a little bit discouraged, and I keep having to try to encourage him. You know, he's such a wonderful human being and obviously a tremendous athlete, but hitting a baseball off Cole Henry or Landon Marceau or some of the guys that we're throwing out there is not easy. And he's had some issues. You know, he's probably struck out half the times that he's batted in these inter-squad games, and it seems like every time he hits a ball hard, it's right at somebody. So I don't think he's had a hit in any of the inter-squad games up to this point. Now that may change this weekend. I just feel like he's one of those kids that all of a sudden it's going to click, and then he's going to be a very outstanding player for us. But he's still got a ways to go before he's going to be a guy that we're going to really count on.
Is it just him not seeing live pitching, or
I think,
is it just getting into baseball muscle memory?
I think it's just not seeing live pitching. And it might be, actually, you know, I mean, his swing is not as fluid as it was when he was in high school. You know, he's not, I'm getting a little technical, but I don't think he's using like his lower body enough, and he's not, you know, getting full use of the strength of his body. And I think a little bit of that is mechanical, and I think a little bit of it is just, you know, lack of having seen pitching, and he's just kind of struggling to find it right now. But I'm not going to get down on him as long as he doesn't get down on himself.
Coach, I think I'm just a little curious with Zach. Is it how do you end up finding a guy like you said you've never seen him play before?
Yeah.
But I mean, how do you kind of get word of him? And is it that, I guess, does that happen all the time when you get a guy like that coming from JUCO that can produce and be in a 3-hole spot like this, like right out of getting here?
I'll tell you this: he's a really good player, and we're very fortunate to have have him here at LSU. Sometimes, the best things happen in the wake of disappointing things. It's just the way life is sometimes. We were very disappointed when the other kid decided that he was going to sign when he was already here, ready to start summer school. But as it's turned out, it's probably been the best thing for us, because otherwise Zach Mathis wouldn't be here. And Zach might be the best all-around player that we're going to run out there. Sometimes it just takes getting a little bit lucky, and I think we got lucky. Nolan started to use all his contacts, and I used my contacts. He was first recommended to us by a collegiate summer league coach, a guy by the name of Eric Coleman, who coaches the Danville Dans in the Prospect League, where we send players every year. And so we called him because he's kind of got his pulse on the junior college world in California. That's where he's from. And so Eric knew about Zach, recommended him to us. Then we started doing some background checking. He had been drafted. He was drafted, and the word we heard is they wanted to convert him to being a catcher. But then when I found out what school he was at, I knew the coach. Like I said, he had been the head coach at the Air Force Academy after me. So I called Reed Peters, his coach, and Reed had nothing but great things to say about him. And when we called him, he was on a visit to South Carolina, and he still had visits scheduled to Florida State and Texas Tech after that. So those are 4 pretty good schools if you add LSU in there. So we figured that there must be something to this, even though we had not seen him play. But then you Google him and you see videos of him, and you say, it's hard to tell for sure with just video. It's not like watching football video or basketball video, but you could tell that he got up there and got his money's worth at the plate, and I always like that about hitters. So, we reached out to him. Like I said, he was on a visit to South Carolina. The next weekend he came to Baton Rouge, and then he canceled his Florida State and Texas Tech visits.
Is that something that's ever happened to you before?
Sure.
Recruiting a player that you've never seen?
Oh, it happens a lot. It used to be all the time, but recruiting in baseball over the last 2 decades, I'd say, has become much more intense. And you not only do you have to see the players, but you see them multiple times. But before that, it used to be a lot of just within the coaching fraternity. You would call coaches, and or call professional scouts, and you get a recommendation, and then you cross-check them by talking to other people. And when you see that there's a lot of commonalities in what they're telling you, it generally turns out to be true. But you could never do your entire recruiting that way, but when you're in a little bit of a crisis management situation like we were last summer, it was late June. We just lost our top shortstop recruit. Oh my goodness, we've got to do something. But actually what ended up happening is, instead of just because their coach at his junior college told me that he was okay defensively, just okay, like those commercials, he was just okay. I thought, well, maybe we better get another shortstop. And we actually ended up getting 2 guys to replace the one guy, and the other one was Zach Arnold. Unfortunately, Zach has been beset by an injury starting in the fall. It's carrying over into the spring. But once Zach gets back playing, which will be in about a month, I think that gives us another really good option. So we'll see how it all plays out as time goes on.
After all the issues y'all had pitching being healthy the last couple of years, are you guardedly optimistic right now?
That's a good way to put it, Scott. I'd say guardedly optimistic, but I feel very confident that it's going to continue. And I think some of the things that we've implemented that I talked about on Media Day with the Motus sleeve, with Corey Couture being so involved now with telling us how much a certain player can throw on a given day. I think Alan has made some adjustments with what he's done with the kids. We're giving them more recovery time than we have ever given them before. I just think that it's going to continue. Now, listen, anything can happen on a given moment. All you have to do is probably follow Kendall Rogers on Twitter and realize that some youngsters having Tommy John surgery at this school or that school. It happens virtually every day. And there's some things that, it's just, I guess, fate or whatever you want to call it. And it could happen to us tomorrow, could happen to us tonight, you know, but you feel confident that you're doing everything possible to keep them healthy. And hopefully they get enough work still to develop, you know, in the way that they should develop. You know, one of the things, honestly, that we kind of thought about was what they're doing with the football team over there, you know, with the wide receivers, how they wear that device so they can monitor how much they're running each day, the wide receivers. It's like a GPS thing. And, you know, I was talking to Travis Roy, our strength and conditioning coach, because Daniel Cabrera had a quad strain during the fall. And I said, I asked Travis, I said, is this going to be an issue with him in the spring? Or is he not in good enough shape? And Travis said, no, it probably happened because he's running too much and the muscle gets fatigued and then you have a problem. So that kind of influenced me a little bit too with the pitching, knowing that arms, legs, you know, they have a certain amount of energy in them, and if you overdo it, the muscles or the other soft tissue starts to give way. So I feel confident that they're going to stay healthy and pitch well.
Coach, how did you feel about Cabrera and Veloso making the All-SEC team?
Well, I was happy for both of them, and I think it's well deserved, but I'd be much happier if they were first team at the end of the year. Beloso had a great year last year as a freshman, and I would expect that he'll follow that up with another superb year. Daniel Cabrera is obviously an outstanding college player, and hopefully he'll have the kind of year that'll vault him up in the draft, maybe as a first rounder. So it's nice, you know, when individuals are recognized, but I think our players know that the better the team does during the season, that's the way that you get recognized individually. All they have to do is look over at the football program to see how that happens.